Sometimes you might have been take a parental role. Sometimes a child. We switch your buttons non-stop. Probably
Mhm.
come in with a lot of impatience. Usually when things resolve is when you start to learn to master that patience. All of a sudden it's like that lesson is learned, that kind of moves out of the way and makes room for many other things. So is your life planned? No.
Okay.
There's many different things. We have many different avenues we can go. I believe that some people have even designed exit points because some people choose some pretty difficult lives to come into. And it's a lot easier in spirit form or soul form to choose that versus being in this body in this lifetime experiencing it all.
And when do we
So,
make these decisions? Is this in between lives? Like, is
yeah.
it in the afterlife? Is that when we make
Mhm.
these decisions? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
I know that most people that I've talked to or that I've researched when they've had a near death experience, I also believe I've had one as a toddler. Um, they call it going back home. And even
Okay.
when you're there with people and they're terminal and they're waiting, death is imminent by the physical signs. I call it the gift. This is part of what I'm going to put in my book. You don't get it with everybody, but you get it with quite a few people. And it might be 5 minutes, might be a minute, might be 8 hours if you're really lucky. Those ones are hard for a family. But the person is comatose, they're no longer eating, drinking, and then all of a sudden it's like they wake up. They're completely lucid. They're able to have that conversation. Like it's like they were before they were ever ill. And it's
Mhm.
also like almost like they get to tie up those loose ends, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
maybe they're waiting for somebody to come home or whatever it may be. Um, so sorry, I'm getting off track here with it. So yeah, I believe that happens, like I say, when people have a near-death experience, they call it going back home. When
Okay.
people are ready to pass over, you'll hear them talking about, oh, I see my husband, like the husband passed away, or my wife, or oh my God, my parents are here, or who is that angel that's here? Like you'll hear of the angel of death, Archangel Azrael, and he gets a pretty bad rap, right? But
Mhm.
is not a bad guy. You hear all this kind of stuff, and it's so hard to marry the two when you start thinking about this coming from a scientific mind and brain where I was trained to getting into all this woo-woo stuff. So yes, your life isn't predetermined. Okay, so whether it's like there was a really good podcast I watched, somebody that channels one of their guides, and she's this very elegant British type lady named Grace, and she was explaining about you'll get the soul deciding it's going to incarnate into a lifetime, and it's going to go along the buffet table and pick out, yeah, I'm going to have an abusive parent, I'm going to be alcoholic, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that, and she said I'm one of the guides that stands at the end of the table and says, now I think you got a little bit too much on your plate.
I think I
You're going
heard
to have
her. I think I heard that
to
talk
this.
before. Yeah. I think I
Hmm.
heard her before. Yeah.
Yeah, her name is Jamie Butler, actually.
Okay.
It's called The Lighter Side on YouTube, and one of her guides is a little girl, Maitland, and she's actually been able to prove that Maitland lived. She has a birth certificate. She lived in Chicago. When she died, everything she's got from her, she was able to prove there was actual documents in Chicago. She died in 1930, so pretty cool. Anyway, so that's what this is about. I don't know if I'm answering your question here because it's so complicated to try and explain this. And like I said, once you start trying to think about all the people that may be involved to maybe help you evolve into something that you want to do with your soul, like again, we can go back to something really traumatic, like somebody murdering your loved one,
Hmm.
and and you see people that do, they end up in the utter depths of despair and life is completely ruined. It can go that way, but there's other people that can choose to take that experience and do huge, bigger, greater things for humanity, like maybe developing a foundation or having laws changed. You know what I'm saying? So it's a
Right.
whole bigger picture. All I can tell you is we are all connected. I totally believe that. And I'm talking about the animal field. I'm talking about everything. We are all connected. I believe we all come from the same place. As I understand it, Earth is one of the most difficult places to incarnate into
Wow.
because we come in with amnesia. We don't remember any of our previous lives. We
Right.
we have no idea what we are capable of as human beings. We're a young race. We come into these heavy, clumsy bodies that are fragile, and it's sometimes it's a pretty difficult place to be. versus say you've talked to people that are able to connect with ETs, or the Arcturians or Pleiadians or star seeds or whatever you have. They, what, we all, and as a race we all seem to have different type gifts. I know a lot are quite fascinated with, say, reproductive capabilities of the human being or the emotional range of a human being. So I don't know. I'm all over the place here because it does go all over the place with this. It's so hard to explain. I don't know. Does that answer it, or does it just make it more confusing?
No, you clarified some things. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Hmm.
interesting. Okay, so
Hmm.
this idea you're having, you're explaining, it goes on the idea that reincarnation is how what is what happens basically. Yeah, and that after a life is lived, you make these decisions, and that you're saying these decisions aren't like set in stone, but they're kind of like loosely there, and you decide what
How
happens, and
I
then.
look at it is, and I don't have all the answers, is, but from studying this and looking at it from afar, the further you get away from something that you may have set for your soul to learn about as a life lesson or grow and evolve, the more difficult life becomes. And then it's
Mhm.
almost like more that it's almost pushing you to migrate to where, because we have guides, we do, I call it spirit, we have guides, and a lot of people may not believe that. I believe that we also have ET guides as well. We have all different kinds, and they're here to help us. That's all they are here. They respect that we have free will. You have to give them permission to work with them. Um, Otherwise, they respect that. And again, you start getting into it's not really a scientific basis, but it's more personal accounts from people or pictures or photos, or then you almost get into the paranormal research again. But we get away from the scientific, method because is it repeatable? Absolutely not. You're going to hear the same stories. I don't know if you've ever heard of the story of Dr. Eben Alexander. Have you heard of him before?
Maybe it sounds familiar, but maybe you could refresh my
He's
memory.
a world famous neurosurgeon that was an
Okay,
atheist.
okay,
Absolute business, like absolute, like no bedside manner. It was all about work and, surgery and everything else. There is no afterlife. There's nothing to the effect whatsoever. Then he gets stricken with meningitis and ends up in a coma. I believe it was for 3 weeks to a month,
wow,
and dies during this numerous times. He
whoa,
he wakes up and tells the most extraordinary story of what he went through during his near death experience, what he sees, what he knows, what his purpose is. And he's kind of like the laughing stock of his community because he was one of these people that put it right down to science that what people are seeing when they have a near death experience in the tunnel of life and it's our light, all this is just the chemicals in the brain that are reacting to the lack of oxygen, blah, 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 blah. Well, he's telling a different story now.
yeah,
Mhm,
interesting.
mhm.
Hmm. Okay,
I always say I don't think any of us are ever gonna know the answers, though, until we transition back home, if you will.
yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hmm.
mhm.
Okay, well, that being said, I could go over some more ideas that I have for
Please do.
research.
Yeah, this goes by way too quick because we only have about a half hour left. See how fast that goes by?
It's true. It's good though. Okay, so just remembering. Okay, another thing that I thought would be good for starting paranormal research. So just to say what I said before was like I thought I just had this idea. I want to develop it more. You're helping me develop it. Was this trying to get Bigfoot to gift us a body? That'd be great.
Right.
The other thing I was thinking about because I wanted to conduct some kind of study and I want to have it published, scientifically. So the other thing that I keyed into was CE5 or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And what I like about for people that don't know, CE5 basically says that there are methods or meditations that you could follow and you could summon these anomalous lights to you. Now, what I like right off the bat is that it's got that one thing, repeatability. This whole CE5 thing is based on the idea of repeatability. You're supposed to be able to follow these directions and summon lights. So I like the idea of generating this experiment, these methods where I follow the same directions. I summon the lights. When the lights come, I
Mm.
can make sure using apps that they're not a plane, they're not a helicopter, they're not a planet, they're not a star, they're not any natural phenomenon, that they are actually anomalous lights. Then what I could also do with Jacques Vallée, a French ufologist, has said this, if you take pictures of these lights with old school film, not digital cameras, but old school film, there's a lot of data there. You could analyze them.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, this is a pretty good experiment. If I could consistently summon anomalous lights, photograph the lights, and get consistent results, I could publish something on this. Now, the downsides are that I don't know what these lights are. They could have nefarious intentions. If they are smart occupants, they could not have the best intentions for me. But I guess you got to start somewhere. So that's
There's
another
an
idea I
app.
have.
Yeah, there's an app for that. I know all about
Right.
that. You know what? There was I got to get his name. I wrote it down because we were watching this documentary on this gentleman, and I'm wondering if you've heard of him before. There's got to be something to him too, because the other thing you have to be prepared when you delve into this stuff, as you probably know, there's a lot of people that don't want us knowing about these kind of things, and we're
Yeah.
we're seeing this happening to them. I know I wrote his name down, Stan. Give me one sec here. So I'm trying to figure out how to use my new phone here.
Sure.
Um, Stan, give me one.
Stan
Stan,
Romanic? No.
thank you. Yeah, Romanic. What's your
Stan
thoughts
Romanic.
on him? Seeing all his photos and video and everything else that he has, and then I'm sorry, I guess Joe loves to call me the queen of conspiracy. I don't like to call it conspiracy. I like to call it truth seeking because I just don't jump on everything. But I could definitely see what happened to him at the end of his, so far what we've followed in his documentary, that definitely can happen.
Yeah, Stan Romanic. Well, I will just say I only have a cursory understanding of his case,
Hmm.
of his experiences, and of his situation. So it's not enough for me to make any kind of informed opinions. But why don't you expand? So you're basically saying that, if I understand you correctly, you're thinking that he got too close to the truth, and that he was
Oh,
punished for that.
you know what? I hope we're still on YouTube here because I'm not seeing YouTube playing here, Joe. If you're listening, I might have to text him. It looks like it cut off. I might have to
Let me
message
check.
him. Are you there, Joe? Just let me text him because I don't think we're live right now. We're live on uprntalkradio.com, but I don't think we're live on YouTube. I think it cut off, so just let me message him. It'll
Okay.
take me 1 second, and then I'll tell you about Stan. I'm gonna say,
Okay.
I think YouTube shut off.
Yeah, I
YouTube.
think so.
You notice that too?
Yeah, it's cut off at like an hour and 14
Yeah,
minutes.
that's
Yeah.
what I just noticed. So most people aren't even hearing most of this stuff. That's too bad. So with Stan Romanek, and I just came into some of the documentary that Dell was watching, and he was getting these strange phone calls from people referring to him as Starseed, and you could tell it was an auto-generated voice. There's pictures, like actual video of in his kitchen, like these faces showing in his window. They're in his house. He's waking up with like injuries and all kinds of stuff. And it's a crazy, crazy, crazy story. That's why this documentary was made. And right at
Right.
the end of it, as he started to go public with his story, all of a sudden, miraculously, he got charged with child pornography on his computer. And they
Right. That's
interviewed
what I
the
thought.
people who knew him. Yeah, but he never ever did stuff like that. As I mean, his wife seemed to, because I guess as the story went, it got quite crazy. And there's pictures of these little kids that were calling him. He had audio recordings calling him daddy and giving him a name, and then showing up at some of these conferences where he'd be speaking. And there was a woman that showed up at one of his conferences because he was married. He still is, and
Yes.
he kept saying to his wife, I know this woman, I know this. And apparently, these children over wherever they were abducted to are him and this other woman's. Have you heard this story? It sounds crazy, but there was a lot of evidence produced in this documentary.
Yeah, I've heard so far what you've said. Yes, I have heard about that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have enough information to make an opinion, unfortunately. I will just say I have heard what you said, and I will just say that yes, it does seem, if you look at the history of ufology, unfortunately, it does seem like there are some forces out there that have negative intentions to this becoming public. I
Hmm.
will say that as well. So
Okay, then let's go to a different spot. I was going to ask Michael Roser about this, but he wasn't on. What's your thoughts on? Because I contacted Michael after this was supposedly declassified by the CIA about all the documents, but there was no pictures, there was no video. All the forms that were in there, there was a lot of redaction. What's your thoughts on that?
yeah, I think you're referring to recently the CIA released some
Yeah,
documents
CIA.
relating
Yeah.
to UFOs. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, well, I was just talking. I did a podcast recently, and I think it'll come out in a few weeks or a week, with Zelia Edgar, who's with Just Another Tinfoil Hat.
Hmm.
And she mentioned that Jack Valet, I think, was talking to someone in the CIA about UFOs and UFO research. And that person in the CIA said that UFOs are not a scientific matter, they're a national security matter. So it looks like some people in power view UFOs in a different light. Like they really do view them as yeah, national security and not scientifically. So it seems like, and I guess I could see where they're coming from. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I could see how some people in government could view UFO specifically as more of an adversary, like the way you would view like North Korea or China or Russia,
Yeah, but if
as
they,
opposed.
you know what, Joe brought this up, and I have to say that because I had quite the conversation with him the first night before I had my show on the network, and I
Mhm,
think he has a really valid point. They have been around since the beginning of time. I mean, we're seeing this even in Egyptian,
that's correct.
artwork, whatever you want to call it, hieroglyphics and such. If they wanted to harm us, they've had every opportunity to do it, and they haven't,
It's true.
right? I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
saying
true.
they're all good. I'm not saying they're all good because you brought up a good point that I hope we have enough time to talk about getting like aliens. You said how to stop maybe methods or devices to stop aliens from paralyzing us physically. You put that
Yeah.
in your notes. Like, how do we stop that?
But yeah, well, so I was gonna say, so as far as that, it looks like I've read enough cases where it looks like these aliens. I use the term loosely. I'm not saying they're from another planet. Let's just call them aliens because they're not. They seem to be non-traditional humans. They don't seem to be from our society or our culture.
Right.
Or another way of talking about them is UFO occupants. There's enough cases where they have the ability to paralyze us. Either they
Yes.
have a little wand, they just
Mhm.
point at us, and then we're just immobilized. To me, as a biologist, I see this as an evolutionary disadvantage. Like this is something that they have on us that
Mhm.
we need to level the playing field. We need to stop them from being able to do this. It's not good. The example I was giving was like, okay, lions like to eat zebras, right?
Mhm.
But zebras have a couple of things that help them. Zebras are fast runners and they have those stripes. Those
Mhm.
stripes help them like blend in and makes it harder
So
for them
camouflage.
to yeah, it makes them camouflage. Now, that kind of levels the playing field a little bit. Now, imagine if the zebra didn't have the stripes, and the lion was just having like a field day with these zebras. I feel like that's how we are with these aliens or UFO occupants. We it is not a level playing field. These guys can do whatever we want to. So I kind of want to level the playing field a little bit. I
But
don't.
how? Because
Right, that's the question.
I keep hearing, like, whether you want to call it spirit. No, I don't hear voices. It's hard to explain. It's in the mind's eye. We are such a young race. Like the things that they can do, yeah, we could do it too. But to be able to believe in being able to say, have telepathy and telekinesis and all these other gifts and things that, yeah, I believe we're capable of it. But having somebody show you or evolve enough to be able to do this, because they've had thousands of centuries before us to be able to develop the technology, because even their crafts, they don't, like, from what I understand, they utilize the power of their mind basically to if my brain's not working tonight, to basically drive, that's not the word I wanted to use, but
Right.
navigate with the
Sure.
craft. Like, so how do you that's like a caveman kind of going up against somebody, like, say, if we were taking ourselves, like, how do you stop it?
Well, that's the question, right? We don't know how. So the idea for this research project would be just starting to develop. Just you got to start somewhere. Starting to develop a way to stop them from being able to paralyze us, because look, humans have laws, we have rules that we have built for ourselves. And one of the problems with these UFO occupants and these aliens, whatever they may be, they are breaking these laws. I mean, when a UFO comes into your bedroom, paralyzes you, takes you somewhere, that's a lot of laws broken. I mean,
Yeah, but it sounds like the government allowed, like they made some kind of contract with them, allowing them to do this. And it seems that it runs in families, because again, we're going to go back to the woo-woo here for a sec. I have had people contact me and share some people have called it visions, whatever. It's not a vision, it's while they're sleeping. And there are children involved with this. There's one person in particular had a near-death experience and was explaining what the being looked like. It was like she projected it into my mind. I was able to find the picture while we were speaking. And as she's sharing with me about, I knew there was a baby before she even told me. And all I kept hearing was, you contracted to this. You contracted with us for this. I even messaged Joe and said, like, is this something normal? He said, yeah, you do see it in families quite a bit.
There's a lot
So
of
are
weird
we
stuff.
agreeing to this before?
Well, I can help you. I can eliminate at least
Joe,
1,000
we're
different
not
things
even on
that they won't
YouTube
stop
anymore
it.
now. We've been
I'm
off for
just
quite a
saying.
while.
Yeah,
I
oh,
don't know
y'all
what
back on YouTube. I
happened.
don't know what that y'all glitched there for like a minute or two there. I don't know what happened. I don't either YouTube or the internet, one or the other. I'm not sure what went on there, but y'all back. But no, seriously, if you ever want to talk, I can rule out a bunch of stuff we've tried over the years. Oh man, we've tried all kind of stuff to get them not to be able to do that, or to at least be able to alert themselves when it's happening. Because a lot of people know when it's coming now. They can sense it, but it's still trying to stop it or even slowing it down is really a hard thing. They're just so much more
Well,
advanced than
because they're so evolved, I think it has to a lot to do with energy too, the
well.
way they manipulate energy and everything else around them.
Out of the three major races that are taken of us, two of them are using a physical technology to paralyze you. The other
okay.
ones are using a mental technology to it. So the mental thing, we can probably, granted, the Gray's brains are probably 3.5 times the size of ours, so it may take us a little while, but eventually humans, especially since each generation we breed up and our telepathic abilities get, I mean, it's one of the things the organization I work for does is measure empathic and telepathic abilities. So they're breeding up. So we know each generation is getting better because we have 6th-generation cases now. So we can see from great great grandmother to great great granddaughter whose abilities are better. And we definitely see
Like,
an
I
increase.
didn't share this with you, but and Joe teases me all the time about it. I have missing time and I believe I was abducted. I
That,
blinked and an hour and a half was gone, and I was 40 miles away from where I was at the lights. And I know the city. I've lived here my whole life, and I was in front of a building. Don't even know where I was. It was Dell calling me to see where I was. It was only supposed to be 3 minutes, and my car was in the opposite direction.
wow. Okay.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yep.
Well, what do you guys think about this idea that these grays are basically just future humans coming back in time? What do you guys think about that?
I've heard that for a long time. In the beginning, it was a good theory. It really was. It was one of
I
those
know.
theories that seemed to pan out. And then we had an issue. Um, I always tell people when you get into this field, you should always start in the past and work your way forward. I mean, as far back as you can go, because you're going to find all kind of interesting stuff. Well, you'll find mentions of the reptilians and humans back pre-Christ. So if you go
Yes,
back
Okay.
and
that's what
look,
I
you'll
believe.
see them Sumerian, Egyptian texts. They're all
Yep.
over the place. Now, the Greys are mentioned pre-Christ, but only in one civilization, and only about 2,800 years ago was in the Egyptian hieroglyphs. There's actually 3 different hieroglyphs that actually have a Grey present in it. So they're mentioned there, but they seem to have come on the scene much later than the other two races, and they seem to have taken over once they got here. So if you read your ancient text, you'll find that the Sumerians and the Egyptians, even the Dogon, talk about the reptilians and the human aliens in great detail, how they came to visit, the Nemo came here and landed. There's great big stories and legends about them. So there's a lot, and even also in the South American cultures. And
Okay.
you'll notice pre-Christ, everything that was worshipped on this planet was either the reptilians were the bearers of life and the good things, and the human aliens were like the dog heads and the demon
Yeah.
heads and the eagle heads and shit like that. So you had this very distinct difference. Then Christ was born, the Greys come on the scene full force, and all the reptilian stuff goes to the wayside. Now
Okay.
all of a sudden the reptilians are evil, they're bad, they're the ones who, they're the ones who got us to get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, which by the way, that story is in so many cultures I've lost track of it. but it's one of those things that we can actually physically track now. And thanks to these little things called the blood type studies we launched 2 decades ago and the DNA studies, man, we can find people who have been contacted that don't know they've been contacted. Makes our life
Like my
really
mother.
easy. It is. Well, the thing of it is we know that the percentage of people being taken to the planet is about 10 to 15%, which roughly is a huge number.
I mentioned my mom because
when you get into that number, you've got to figure out how they're being taken, who's being taken, why they're being taken. But it always comes back to family lines, and it always goes back a good ways in history. So now, because of the DNA research and the blood type research, we can find sections in history and time where it looks like to put this in perspective. So Irish, Welsh, Scottish. We know one group, the abductees came from there. The RH negative there is really high. The green eyes are really high. There's just a lot of stuff there.
That's where my mom's from, Joe. That's where my mother's family is from. Yeah.
Also in Mesoamerica and Native America, we have 2 different sections where we know because most people don't even realize that Central America and South America is 98% O blood, which is so weird. It's unbelievable. But it's a fact. Yeah, it's a fact. You can't get away from the fact. It's still there. The rest of the world is 33, 35, 38, whatever the percentages are. Not South America and Central America. And then remember, when they came over in the land bridge, that's where they were supposedly went first, was sent to South America and then came back up, which makes you wonder who all these weird O negative, these O people, why there were so many in this continent and why they're so different on the rest of the continents. So, and of course, we also know that Mesoamericans have different shaped skulls. It's one of the hottest areas for UFO activities on the planet, the whole entire continent down there. It's just, so it gives you directions to look for people that probably have been taken or in family lines. And once you find a family line, everyone from the very beginning of that family line till now has been taken. So if it started 100,000 years ago and with John and Mary, and here we are 100,000 years later, yes, and we have kids all over the place, coming through there. I mean, you're talking millions of people just from one family line. And then when you start talking, 1,000 family lines or 5,000 family lines, whatever the original abduction cases were way back in the day, those kids now number in the billion, at least a billion. So you got to stop and look at our planet. So we got a whole segment of our population. It's much more advanced emotionally, much more advanced telepathically and on those lines. And we haven't really got to the telekinesis part real good, but the empathic people and telepathic people are really good. We have both the Air Force and the Navy have their own branches to deal with telepathy now. So we know it's a solid physical thing. And we don't even consider someone who's been taken to be a real abductee if they're not at least empathic. We're that positive about it now. Because, we're at 57, 58, almost 50,000, 59,000 cases now. Over the 37, 38 years I've been in the field, and the 22 years that the organization's been around. It's phenomenal in the things we've learned. We learned all kind of stuff, reasons to hear, what they're up to, what a lot of the other things.
I do want to mention the telepathy thing is really interesting because there was recently a medical scientific journal that published a meta-analysis that found that there is evidence that telepathic ability is real.
It's real.
So this is, yeah. So, but I'm saying this is like a medical journal that's very well respected, publishing a study, which is what the skeptics always ask for. But here it is,
Well, people didn't realize, but Harvard and Cambridge and a couple of the other Ivy League colleges had telepathic things on there, actually paranormal and telepathic on the college grounds.
Sure.
It wasn't until I think the late 80s, early 90s when it became kind of funny that some of these colleges kind of pushed it away. But there was actually degrees in it. So it's a strange thing. And people didn't really have a doubt about telepathic abilities. The argument always came, does everybody have them or is it just a select group? Can it be developed as a population or a species, or is this inside, like what I always say, the contactee group? Because that's where the abilities seem to be. They seem to be very strong inside of contactees. They're very telepathic. And one of the things we help them to do is learn how to use that to their advantage. Because, being a contactee is enough to make you crazy. So there might as well be some good that comes out of it, And
Yeah.
if you can learn how to use that empathic and telepathic ability to close deals, get raises, knowing your kids are lying to you, whatever it is, man, if you can use it, you should be using it, is all I'm saying. So
Let me ask you this, Joe. What do you think about the hybridization agenda? Do you think the Greys have a hybridization agenda?
I do think they have a hybrid, but not of Grey. Okay, this is where me and most everybody in the field disagrees. Everybody always wants to think that the Greys and the reptilians and humans here to change themselves. No, they're perfect. Why would a race that's 1 billion plus years old want to change itself? Unless there was some kind of drastic thing. And since they don't breed physically like we do anymore, it's not really a thing for them. They always say, oh, they're not emotional. Of course, Greys are emotional. Greys, you can get a belly laugh out of a Grey if you're lucky. But the thing of it is they have their agendas. They're running these agendas, and some of these agendas about us, and some of these agendas about much bigger and darker things than we are, and some things that they're just not going to tell us because we're babies and they don't trust us, or we just won't understand. Because as it is, 80% of the technology that we see looks like magic to us. Even though being a modern human, we know it's not. We know it's a technology. Still, we can't explain it. We're like, yeah, okay, how does that work again? There's no wires. There's nothing attached to anything. Wait, you're thinking about it and the ship's flying around? I mean, these are things that we will have one day. I'm not going to deny that. We just don't have them now. We just don't understand how they work. So these aliens are much more advanced than we are. But what they did was, and I don't know if this was accident or not, but it probably, however far I go back and was in our future, when the human aliens showed up on this planet, they decided for whatever reason they wanted to settle here and maybe do a little colonization, maybe do a little mining. But the Sumerians talk about them in great details. They talk about the 2 great white dome cities they built that were covered. It didn't seem like the people who were visiting could really breathe our atmosphere. And the story goes that they created a subspecies of themselves to go out and mine and take care of the planet. And that group said, well, we're omnipotent. What the hell are we doing this for? So they created what the Sumerians call the 7 creations of man, with a remnant of us being the last creation. There was like the bird man, the dog man. There's just lots of versions of us. And then they created us. But the difference is we weren't quite as self-aware as we are today. I don't want to say we weren't completely. We just weren't. So the story goes, and the Dogon talk about this as well. So the reptilians leave the Dogon. They go over to Samaria. They start raping, stealing women, bringing the women back. The women start having babies. Well, when I heard the story originally, they said they were very different. So I thought, well, maybe they look like little reptoids or something, but that wasn't what it was. What it was they changed in attitude. See, everybody forgets we have a reptilian section in our brain, and it's a big part of what makes us who we are today. Without it, we'd just be a bunch of little wusses. So they came back and I guess overthrew the original government. So now you've got a species that the human aliens started that the reptilians interfered with. So now they have whatever original DNA was us, plus the human DNA, plus the reptilian DNA. Sounds like to me there might have been somebody might have been getting PO'd, and there might have been a little war getting started here because, I guess the humans felt like the reptilians were interfering, and reptilians were like, hey, we were here 63 million years ago. Screw you. We found this planet.
So I got a question for you, Joe. 63 million years ago, I just heard about this theory that when they wiped out the dinosaur, or when the dinosaurs were wiped out, that yes, the aliens were here back then, but they didn't stop it. But and I forget where I was reading this, they were saying that they took basically like a Noah's Ark. They took a little bit of every single dinosaur. They have that DNA still.
Well, from the reptilian side of it says that they were caught off guard, that they had been forecasted to miss the planet. And that's one of the reasons that resource map, the Pravada map, was made. There was a map made around the same time. It's from Pravada. They call it the Pravda map, actually, but it's the map of the creator. And this suggests that something was coming and they were setting up resources for it. But it didn't look like, I think they just thought it was I don't think they thought it was going to impact the planet. It was just going to affect the planet. Unfortunately, somebody was wrong. And it impacted the bejesus out of the planet. But then there's another story that might be a little different, because when you push the Greys, when you can get a contactee to push the Greys on this, basically what you get out of this, and I've heard this story about 50 times now, is that Mars was inhabited, Venus was inhabited, and there was a planet between Mars and Jupiter. And somebody got really pissed, and there was a big nasty war between 3 different races locally, but there was also another war going on in the cosmos. Well, that's what destroyed all 3 of the planets were destroyed at the same time. Some people say they were lobbing asteroids at each other. Nobody really knows exactly what happened, but all 3. So we know the planet, at first they said it wasn't going to be a planet. between Jupiter and Mars. It was just a broke up remnant of a never formed planet, is what NASA said. And then, no, they found out because of certain minerals they're finding, it had to be compressed, which means at one time it had to have been a planet. So now we found out there's a planet destroyed. And of course, there's always a rumor about Nibiru, planet 5 times the size of Earth, used to come by every 3,600 years, haven't been by in the last 7,000 years. So maybe it got pulled in and destroyed. Regardless what happened, when that 5th planet went, it took all 3 of these with it. It wiped out Earth's original population of whatever was here. It pretty much just killed Mars and sent Venus into global warming. But most scientists agree that these 3 planets did get wiped around the same period of time, which suggests something else was going on. Yeah, maybe it was just a large group of asteroids passing through our solar system, or maybe a comet like, the Levy comet. That's all possible. But it also could have been extraterrestrials got into it over something. And that might be why they're all trying to be peaceful and behave each other now. And that might also explain something else. But here's I'm going to throw a lefty in there, and I'll let y'all go back to the yapping. Think about it like this. The human biological clock is set to a 24.25-hour day, right?
Yeah.
Earth's day is 23.75 hours. Figure that one out. Now, there is a planet in the solar system with a 24.25-hour day. That's Mars, but it's not Earth. The optimal temperature for people to work on this planet is 73 degrees Fahrenheit. The optimal temperature of Mars at 55 million years ago, guess what it was? 73 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know, but it means that ain't mean anything. It might just be an oddity. Maybe some of our DNA came from there whenever it died. But even our scientists today think there was life on Mars back in the day. So it's changing the way we look at our solar system, changing the way we look at these races. Because originally, everyone always assumed these races were either from another dimension, us coming back, or from deep space. No one ever considered that this solar system may have been much more inhabitable 50 million years ago. No one ever even stopped to think about that until we started looking at when these planets started dying, and it wasn't billions of years ago, it was millions of years ago. So that kind of changed the layout of things. But the grays, that are grays, they come in what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sizes and 4 colors, and ain't none of them gray. That's how you know right there. I'll be honest, everyone listening tonight, if you've seen a gray alien, you've been probed by the government. Okay, it's all I can tell you. You've been middle because grays are not actually gray in color. They are not. And I have got thousands of cases to prove it to you. They're just not there. They do have big eyes, but they're not even that's not even real. Those are just patches that go over their eyes. Those actually can be removed. Yeah. They're very telepathic, very empathic. They have easy telekinesis. They also have the ability to meld with their ship, which is kind of weird.
What about these? What about this idea that some of these smaller grays are just like robot drones?
Some of them are.
I called clones.
They're actually they're cyborgs, is what they really are. Okay. If we have to use a real definition, that's what the best one, because they're half gray, half cyborg. And I don't know if it's true or not, but we do these things. We take like 50 contactees, and we'll send out a group of questions. And we'll have each one of them before they go to bed or when they get up in the morning, whatever they're doing, just keep repeating the question in their head. And when next time they get taken, it's a telepathic thing. They send a question out to Gray or whoever alien is, answers it. Sometimes they get punished for doing it, but most of the time they just answer the question and move on. The best part about this study is the people don't know each other. So it's a blind study. So we come back and send out 50 people, come back and get the same 50 answers. We know we are onto something. And a lot of times that's just how we push the Grays to see what they're up to, what we can find. And they know what we're doing. They've adjusted to researchers over the years, like the lack of missing time today versus the lack of gain, the new presence of gain time, the lack of cover memories versus the new type of memories they use where they just take a mundane memory out of your head and loop it. There's a lot that's all stuff that they learned because researchers learned that, missing time and cover memories were a way to find abductees. And then we figured out, they figured out, oh, well, shit, well, we can fix that. We'll just pull them out of time, put them back at the same time we took them. Well, they ain't no more missing time now. I rarely get a missing time case anymore. It's a weird thing. I get them from back in the past. But since about 1990 to now, I rarely get a missing time case anymore. It's
so
usually
am I rare then? Because that didn't happen in the 90s to me.
It was just like weird time. Well, what they did was it's just weird. Sometimes we only caught them by accident doing this. I mean, we figured out some weird stuff, and they can take you out of time, put you back in. Like, I know you've heard me tell the story before. I had dinner with a group of contactees in Pensacola. They left. We all went out to have dinner. We had pictures taken tonight. Everybody was well dressed. Everybody's well groomed, well shaved, everything. I get a phone call 6:30 next morning, screaming, hollering, going on. So this girl's got like 3 weeks worth of hair on her legs. This guy's got, he didn't even have a beard. He's got a big old beard down to the damn middle of his chest overnight. So under hypnosis, there was 3 weeks worth of memories.
Wow.
And they were only gone 12 hours as far as we know. Well, we don't even know that. All I can say is we dropped them off at 1 a.m. and they called me at 6 a.m., so 5 hours. And nobody had seen anything. Nobody heard anything. Nobody knew anything. Went and brought them to the doctors, had all kind of checkups done, what could cause this. Even a doctor was like, what? You mean what? Because he was kind of grossed out about the girl with all the hairy underarms and legs. And she's like, no, what happened overnight? And the doctor just looked at her like, yeah, you're so full of you know what, man. But it did. And we had pictures to prove it, from the night of and the night and the next day. Cases like that are hard to get around. Or when the girl in California showed up in the guy's bed in New York, and the girl in New York showed up in the guy's bed in California. That's one of my favorite cases, man. It's one of the top 5 cases. One of the first 5 cases I ever investigated. And I was like, no way, somebody's on crack. There's no way this could possibly be real. But it's interesting. But man, that's what you got to do. You got a good idea. If you can find a way, or even get people taught to resist telepathically, they might actually have a chance of slowing it down. But I got to warn one piece of advice: be careful, because all 3 aliens can be a little bit vengeful. Not vengeful, spiteful might be a better word. That might be a better word. They get a little, I guess, pissy when you mess with them. Hey, but you know what? I will tell you this: I have on many occasions heard about the Greys acting like, in the reptilians too, acting like proud parents when their contactee did something very telepathic, or something just off the realm, or completed a project that they had them working on. They do get kind of like, wow, this is a pretty smart human.
You say they treat us like pets, Joe? That's what you said.
Well, the Greys do. The reptilians look at us differently. The reptilians look at us as family, because the way their families' lines are set up, it's different. So they treat us the same way, which is a bad thing and a good thing, because reptilians have a hierarchy society. So if the alpha male or alpha female decides they want to have sex with somebody, they just go have sex with them. And it's not considered an affront. But for a human, male or female, that's rape. For a reptilian, it's just part of the natural thing. But there's other things like that. But they also have genetic memory. And that's why a lot of contactees get these images and these things in their head. And they can, actually, a couple of them turn out to be pretty good novelists, because they're great stories. But they don't know what it is. It's just memories that are there. It's not theirs. Well, it's probably from one of the ancestors before them, probably one of the reptilians before that, because they just passed their memories on. And the way they told me it worked was, it's not like it's all the memory. It's just, I guess, the important memories and some of the background stuff. I guess it's too much when you start talking about races that are 700 million years old. I don't know how the hell you pass that on from one generation to the next. That's got to be an enormous amount of information for anybody. But it's, we've learned a lot. I mean, over the years, we've been real fortunate. And when we started the organization, when I was with MUFON back in the day, we did the first 5,000 abduction cases, and now we're up to almost 60. And we've been learning and learning and learning. We share as much as we can, but you know how it is. Government don't like you sharing too much.
Yeah.
The only thing I've ever got hit for is the alien agenda, though. They shut us down, the internet. Not just us. They shut the internet down for 3 days. It was Alfred Weber was on with me, and he just asked me a question. He was on being interviewed, and he just asked me this question about something about a particular alien agenda. I said, well, let's talk about it a little while. And then the internet would go down every 10 minutes and come back up, go down, go down. And it was weird, because it wasn't mine so much as was everybody listening. It was actually annoying people. People were calling in, writing in, what are you doing? Our internet keeps going down. And then boom. And we went to get into this one particular part about this agenda, and they crashed hard. Shit,
Is that why YouTube went down? Maybe what we were
I
talking about.
I don't know what happened, but literally for 3 days there was no internet access. And
because that's never happened before like this. Before that, the internet, like YouTube, just shut down like this.
Well, you got a guy on here talking about it. He sounds like he's pretty well educated. He sounds like he's really going to get into. He's really working hard. I love meeting people like you, because I meet so many other people. Okay, that came out wrong, but still. No, I'm serious. I mean, I like meeting people who like to do research. I've got a bachelor's in science. I'm really just scientific orientated, And not that I don't like paranormal and a bunch of other stuff. I like things to make sense to me, or to work in an order or a reasoning to it. Not just, oh, I was probed by aliens and I seen pretty lights. No, I need because we figured it out. There's agendas here. There's actually certain things that go on when they take you as a child. They take you pre-birth, and then they take you as a child, and there's certain things they do, and then they take you in puberty to 28, 29. There's a whole thing they do in there, and once you get over 30, it changes yet again. It was so nice to be able to see a progression and to understand that this is ongoing, long-term, lots of people involved, and they're not killing us, eating us, or educating us, unfortunately. That's one of the things you'll always hear me say. If they were here to wipe us out, we'd all be dead. And if they were here to enlighten us, we'd all be giggling. Obviously, they haven't enlightened our species. Let's be honest about it. And we're talking. So there's 7.5 billion of us, so they haven't killed us yet. All my ufology, my abduction friends don't care about it, but my ufology friends get pissed, man. They're like, no, they're here to kill us, Joe. I said, well, why ain't they killed us? I said, I bet you one gray ship could wipe this whole freaking planet out. Or they could just take COVID and modify it a little bit, and we'd all be dead in 7 days. I'm like, I said, I think if they wanted to kill us, they could do it. And I said, think about this. They've been here, well, at least 200,000 years. So, back when there was just a million of us on the planet, they could just rode around a spaceship and just shot us. I'm sure they can track humans. I don't know, man. I don't think that's what they're here for.
Why did I done, I guess, Joe? Good thing she didn't see Nebula. She loves cats. I have cats.
New guest now. Boom, knock mama out. Oh, she's back.
Yeah, she thinks she's decided Joe's.
I have to get you on my show. We'll get into some serious conversations. You up on the cover.
Yeah,
I'll
love it.
Lord, give me information and I'll get you on, because I'm just now starting the book this year, and because I've been doing some other crazy stuff.
Well,
I tell you what, too, because I hear you got another degree. I host a show called Science and Beyond. It has nothing to do with UFOs, mind you, but it is a lot more scientific in orientation. We do talk about other stuff, though. We will get into beyond stuff sometimes too, but it's an interesting thing. But it's always great to have people on that are actually taking the time to educate themselves and to go through it in a scientific fashion.
You got a gift for that, because I loved how you explained about science to people, because that's understood and understandable about anybody about science. I love the way you explained that. And again, I apologize, because I don't know if it's because we were talking about UFO stuff. I haven't had that happen.
That was, I seen the OBS software said it disconnected. So that's got to be either an internet glitch. That's the only thing it really can be, is an internet glitch.
Well, in the chat, it says lag. And then all of a sudden I realized, because it looked like another program was coming on, and I was like, what the heck? And that's when I realized it cut out.
But the audio side never did. So that's definitely something YouTube related.
I know we talked about other stuff tonight. Why do I want to call you Big Trees? I know it's Wild Trees.
Hey, Big Trees is fine. That could be my other nickname.
I know.
Lori's done rebranded you, man.
Michael had such a laugh over that. No, I'd love to have you back on, or maybe you and Michael, and we can talk about all this stuff together. And like I said, Joe's going to have Michael on. I know, like you said, I'll give him your info, and he has huge numbers, like huge numbers. So lots of people hear about your work.
We've been talking about
right, Joe?
We've been talking about that and getting him hooked up on a network too. Because I mean, what do we do? What are we at right now in SoundCloud? 117 million, 118 million. So it's definitely getting out there to the world. And Lori probably would have had a little bigger numbers tonight, but we all took the night off on her ahead of her. We were all on hiatus tonight, but I think I'm still around the 300,000 mark. I have to go pull it.
That's pretty good. That's how many people heard live. So that's good.
We'll see what it does in archive. It depends. Because SoundCloud does pretty good, and then they really like UFO stuff too. So.
Because we were just getting into that, and then it cut out. Like I said, the only time I've had that happen was we were talking about police brutality, and it was from Canada. The person I had on, and YouTube even threw the whole show out. They threw out the paranormal one and mine that night.
Yeah, YouTube's been getting a little picky lately for some reason, but we'll
see.
Hate speech wasn't. Yeah, they're going to be a big war on hate speech in the country real soon. We'll have to see how it pans out, but it is a little dangerous because YouTube and I forgot the other one, both say that hate speech is, if it's conspiracy speech, it's hate speech. So if you talk conspiracy, and they can easily say UFOs are conspiracy if they wanted to. So it's a dangerous thing, and these big companies better watch it because they'll find themselves bankrupt. Because you see how many people have been leaving YouTube to go over to BitTube and NewTube and all the rest of them. And I hear Monsters picking up Parler, so they're gonna have a home. And
Monsters picking it up.
yeah, and yeah, they're giving him crap because they said there's all kind of haters over there and stuff. It's gonna be a mess before it gets better, but it's always gonna be a challenge of free speech in this country.
Well, are you open to coming back on again?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to.
Okay,
and I would love to go on Joe's show.
All the UFO stuff, and
yes,
happened.
I'll hold on. Let me get us out of here. We still on here? Yes, the hell we are. Damn it. Google is paying. Wait, what?
What?
Who's paying what? Wait a minute. Google is buying and paying 27,000 and 29,000 consistently talking shot a web from half home joint action 2 months back. Earned $350. What the hell? What? Oh, somebody putting advertising